Hello everybody, welcome back to another video with me, Diamond Racing. Today I'm going to do my Brazil review, ranking the drivers from worst to best, and give you my predictions from the weekend, and then the Las Vegas predictions. So yeah, the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend was a very interesting one. The qualifying with the changeable climate was very interesting, like just turning day into night very quick. The sprint shootout was also very interesting, with Norris taking pole. The big incident with Esteban Ocon and Alonso. The sprint race also with so many overtakes. Norris almost having first position and then not having first position. The Mercedes space that dropped, and the AlphaTauri's making the moves. Very interesting sprint race, and I was really excited for the race itself, and it didn't disappoint. Verstappen and Norris had a very good fight. Well, not really a fight, more like a pace battle, and Verstappen in that Red Bull definitely won. And then the rest of the field was just nuts with all the overtakes. Fernando Alonso holding back Perez, giving him a last lap overtake and finishing 0.05 seconds. Wow, what a move from Alonso. And the rest of the field, the Mercedes just dropped like stones. There was a big incident with Magnussen and Albon, and Piastri and Ricciardo also got damage from that. So just a very interesting weekend overall. But no more ado, let's get into the ranking. P20 and last is going to be Oscar Piastri. Now, Oscar Piastri is last because he was just off the pace of his teammate like badly in the sprint shootout. While he was 10th, his teammate Lando Norris was first. He made a mistake in the qualifying itself, which inevitably meant he didn't put the time on, and he was the only person that wasn't anywhere fast enough to challenge Verstappen, and then he binned it. And in the sprint race, he actually had a good race. Well, a good enough race. He tried his best, but he stayed P10. And I didn't count his race for the because he was lapped. So I didn't count it because you couldn't see how he was tested between other drivers. So yeah, I didn't count that. And he also was my qualifying loser of the day in qualifying, because he was so far behind Norris. P19 is going to be Zhao Guanyu. Just a very weird weekend for him. Very bad. I don't think he was anywhere near the pace of his teammate anywhere this weekend. Probably just a little bit faster than him in the sprint race, making up a few positions. In the race itself, he wasn't very fast. I think it was him and Hulkenberg fighting for the last positions, instead of the without the lap drivers. So not a good race for Zhao Guanyu and Alfa Romeo in general. P18 is going to be Nico Hulkenberg. He was also just off the pace of his teammate. Was outqualified by Magnussen in, I think, both sessions. Maybe not. I think in one of the two sessions, Hulkenberg was outqualified by Magnussen. I can't remember which one. And in the sprint race, both of the horses just fell off, not being fast enough. And then in the race, he was my race loser of the day, finishing last. And the lapped cars doesn't count. Finishing 15th of 15 runners. So that's not very good. Not very impressed with Hulkenberg, who has been very impressive this season so far. P17 is going to be Kevin Magnussen, Hulkenberg's teammate. Not much better this weekend. Like I said, he outqualified Nico Hulkenberg in one of the two sessions. I can't remember which one. In the sprint race, the same as Hulkenberg. They both just fell off like stones in water. I think that's the right way of saying it. And then I didn't count his race because there was a lap 1 incident involving him and Albon. I don't know if Hulkenberg had any damage from that. They are not anything known for that at the moment. Okay, P16 is going to be Carlos Sainz. Now, Carlos Sainz was actually a very good driver this weekend. Not as good. Well, the rest from 16th to 1st is a decent race upwards. Sainz was just off the pace of his teammates the whole weekend. Not very good in the sprint race. I don't think he did a good job in the sprint race. Just making up a few positions, I think. But in the race itself, the Sol Ferrari could only manage to finish 6th. So, yeah, not a very good weekend for Carlos. But I think it's more because of the car. But I can't tell you, really. P15 is going to be Logan Sargent. Now, Logan Sargent, the last 2 or 3 races has actually been very good. He was outqualified by his teammate in the qualifying session. In the sprint qualifying, he was less than a 10th behind Albon, and that's very good. So, yeah, he's starting to get closer to Albon, and that's very good. In the sprint race, I think he stayed last. And in the race itself, he actually finished P11, which I was quite shocked with all with faster cars behind him. Can't remember who everyone was behind him, but anyway, yeah, very good weekend for Sargent. If he just was a little bit faster, he probably would have had some points, but once again, very close for Sargent. P14 is going to be Daniel Ricciardo. Now, this guy had a very good race in Mexico, and I don't think anyone expected Yuki to outperform him as much this weekend. He was outqualified in both the qualifying sessions, and in the sprint race he dropped a few positions while his teammate made a lot of positions up. And once again, I didn't count his race because he was a lap down and you couldn't see how fast the car or he was battling between the drivers. So that's why Ricciardo is only P14. If you saw actually how he did during the race, he could have probably been higher, but yeah, that's all they showed is Tsunoda. So yeah, P13 is going to be Lewis Hamilton. Now, Lewis Hamilton had a very up and down week. I actually thought he maybe would have fought Verstappen, but it didn't happen. He had a decent qualifying session. He outqualified Russell in the qualifying itself. In the shootout, I think Russell outqualified him. In the sprint race, the pace of the Mercedes was just bad, but they both tried their best. But both of them faltering with the tyre wear. And yeah, not a very good weekend for Hamilton and Mercedes as a unit. But I think Hamilton came off worse between him and Russell, pace-wise. P12 is going to be Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon, once again, like most of the drivers, he had a very up and down weekend, being outqualified outqualifying Gasly in the qualifying session, and then had a big crash between him and Alonso, and I think it was his fault. Even though Alonso wouldn't be there, I still think he would have written off his car, but with Alonso being there, I just think it looked worse. That's why he was my sprint qualifying loser. Yeah, just not a... Well, in the sprint race, he made up a lot of positions. I think he outperformed Gasly there. But in the race itself, he struggled with tyre wear while his teammate was flying. And he at least got points. Good for Ocon. But just not as good as his teammate this weekend. B11 is going to be Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez had actually had a good weekend, in my opinion. His best weekend in a while. In a long while. In both qualifying sessions, he was very close to Verstappen. In the qualifying itself, he couldn't have put in a good time because Piastri spun in front of him, causing him to not put up a time or a good enough time. That's why he started 9th. In the sprint qualifying, he did very good. I think he was 3rd. Yes. In the sprint race, he also finished 3rd. Very good. But in the race itself, couldn't get past Alonso in an inferior car. And that's just a little disappointing. But Perez, a very good weekend. If he can get his confidence back, I believe he could keep his seed. P10, our first point scorer, is going to be Valtteri Bottas. And Valtteri Bottas outpaced his teammate by a lot, and he had a very good sprint race. And the race before, he got that problem with the car. I'm still not sure what happened to both of the Alfa Romeos. And yeah, he was my sprint race loser. He actually did not have a very good sprint race. He dropped like a stone. He was worse than the two horses on mediums while he was on soft. I don't know if something happened there, but the pace wasn't there for Bottas in the sprint race. But in the race itself, very good before he DNF'd. P9 is going to be George Russell. George Russell, like I talked about with Hamilton, was out-qualified by Hamilton in the qualifying session. In the sprint qualifying, he out-qualified Hamilton. I think in the sprint race, he had a better race than Hamilton. I can't remember how they both finished. But yeah, he was on the pace of Hamilton in the race itself. I think Hamilton was just a little bit faster. But you can see him being right on the back of Hamilton, not trying to overtake. And then he had a DNF, something with a oil heating problem or something like that. I think they said. So yeah, just not a good weekend for Mercedes. P8 is going to be Alex Albon. Albon in qualifying as always very good. He was in the top 15 in the qualifying itself, and then in the sprint qualifying, but not very good. Like I said, with Sargent was less than 10th behind him, pace wise, and then the sprint race was very good, doing lots of overtakes while his teammates stayed staggered at P20. And in the race itself, like I said with the previous guys, I didn't count his race because he didn't finish his first lap. And yeah, I don't think that it was anybody's fault. I think it was a racing incident. 3 wide in that corner, very unlikely to happen. So that's why it's only P8. P7 is going to be Lance Stroll. Now I'm very surprised at Stroll this weekend, out qualifying Alonso in the qualifying session. That was very cool, very good from Stroll. His sprint qualifying pace was not good, his sprint shootout, but he made it up in the sprint following Alonso through the field, and in the race itself did the best he can and stayed 5th. Very good from Stroll. Yeah, one of Stroll's best weekend so far this year. P6 is going to be Pierre Gasly. Now, like I said when I talked about Ocon, Pierre Gasly was just faster in the whole session this weekend. Instead, except the sprint race and the sprint in the normal qualifying. But the race, he was very good, finishing P7, I think, ahead of Hamilton, just behind Sainz. Yes, 7th, which is very good for the Alpine, while his teammate didn't have the pace or the tire wear to compete with his teammate. P5 is going to be Fernando Alonso. You wonder why Fernando Alonso is so low. Let me explain. In the qualifying, not as good. He was out-qualified by Stroll. In the sprint qualifying, he only had the one session before he got hit by Esteban Ocon. But still very good. He was way faster than his teammate in the sprint. Sorry, my brain is starting to die on me. In the sprint race, he tried his best, but did the same as his teammates and just made it up the field. But in the race, he was my race winner, meaning he was the best driver of the race. And he was wicked fast. His defending is awesome. His attacking was awesome, and he kept Perez behind him for I think like 20 or more laps. But that was just entertaining, the best part of the race, indefinitely. P4 is going to be Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda had a very good weekend this weekend, probably his best weekend. He scored the best in the sprint race. He was P6? Yeah. But in the qualifying, both he out-qualified Ricciardo, and in the race itself, And the sprint race was very, very good, making a few mistakes in the race, but he made it up, finishing P9, I think. Yes, finishing P9 with Ocon just behind him. And yeah, it was very, very good. I'm very impressed with Yuki Tsunoda and the AlphaTauri pace. Williams need to start looking behind them for the AlphaTauris because they're weak as fast at the moment. And they got two very good drivers. So I'm very happy Yuki Tsunoda is in the top 5 this weekend. Our first podium sitter is going to be in third place, Verstappen. Now, Verstappen had a very good weekend again, but not as good as the previous weekends. Perez was quite near him, a 10th to 2, closer than usual. And yeah, that doesn't mean Verstappen had a bad weekend. He just didn't have a dominant weekend, even though he was still dominating. I mean, not as dominant. In the sprint race, he was very good. He was my sprint race winner, the best driver of the sprint race. And in the race itself, tried to run away from Norris, but Norris tried his best in the inferior car to keep near. But Verstappen in that car is just on another level. And that's why his third place, he would have been probably higher if the two drivers ahead hadn't had such a good weekend. Our silver medallion driver is going to be Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc had a very good qualifying session. He was my qualifying winner, the driver of the qualifying, making it P2. Then in the sprint, qualifying again faster than his teammates. In the sprint race, he tried his best to keep up with the drivers ahead, and he did. I think he finished P4, P5. Just behind Hamilton or Russell. I can't remember, man. Anyway, and then bad luck. Like you said, why is he so unlucky? He had a hydraulics or steering failure, he said, and then he just crashed out in a formation lap. I think if he had a good race, he probably would have still been second, but if he had a bad race, he probably would have been third or fourth on this list. But I didn't count that, of course, because he had no race, and that's why it's P2. And our winner of the Brazilian review is going to be Lando Norris. What a weekend. He was so consistent this weekend. Qualifying, the McLaren team made a mistake, but he was faster than his teammate the whole session through. The sprint qualifying first, and he was my sprint qualifier of the weekend. Well, the sprint qualifier winner. In the sprint race, very fast, but the race itself was a very good. Coming from 6th to 2nd in the first turn was so cool to see. And then he almost battled Verstappen. He was in his DRS, and then Verstappen was like gone, you know. But for Norris to keep the pace was very good, and I'm very happy to see Norris doing this good. I really hope he gets his first win anytime soon. And that was my driver ranking. Let's quickly go through my what's it called, F1 Fantasy, which I once again couldn't have changed because there's a glitch on my phone. I don't know. Let me know if anyone else's F1 Fantasy is like that, where you can change the drivers. I got a total of 264, which is quite a good actually for two drivers that on my list didn't do the race. You'll see now. So Perez gave me 37 points, Leclerc -3, Sainz 42, but he is my multiplier by 2. Albon -11 because he didn't crash. Norris 57, Aston Martin 77, and McLaren 65. So this is actually a very good weekend. And I'm glad I couldn't change it. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, my dogs again. And yeah, let's go to my Brazil predictions. And once again, like always, it didn't go good. My good drive was Leclerc. That was correct. My bad drive was Stroll. For once, I'm not correct with that one. Like, if I say he has a bad drive, then he has a good drive. So let's see how the next weekend goes. Pole was Hamilton. No, it was Verstappen still. The sprint shootout winner, Verstappen. It wasn't Verstappen, it was Norris. The sprint race winner, Verstappen. That's correct. My top 5 was 5th was Hamilton. He finished 8th. My fourth place was Leclerc. He did not start. My third place was Sainz. He finished sixth. My second place was Verstappen. He finished first. And my first place was Perez, and he finished fourth. And my wild prediction was Albon would have a good drive, and he did. So at least I got 3 out of the 11 correct, and this is not going good at all. But like always, hopefully the next weekend is going to be much better. My Las Vegas predictions are: my good drive is going to be Esteban Ocon. My bad drive is going to be Fernando Alonso. My pole is going to be Alonso, but you'll hear why I still say it's going to be a bad drive. My top 5 are going to be 5th place Hamilton, 4th place Sainz, 3rd place Gasly, going well on with that one, 2nd place Norris, 1st place Verstappen. Now where's Alonso, you think? I think he's going to have a bad race because he's going to make a mistake and crash. Yeah, hopefully not, but that's what I think is going to happen. And then my wild prediction is Hulkenberg is going to score a point or points. And that is my Brazil review, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the rest of my reviews, please go watch that. And I made a video of where would the drivers be if there was 3 drivers per team. Go watch that video. I think it's very good and very interesting. So if you like this video, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you like these kinds of things. And I hope you have a good weekend without Formula 1, which is going to suck. But anyway, cheers.